Welcome to the Nautic Nomad podcast. I'm your host, Randy Berry. Throw off the bow lines, sit back and relax as we discover adventure, explore the world on water, and share about everything yachting. What's up, Nomads? Thank you so much for tuning in once again. This week we have Aidan Stride from Chilton Associates joining us to discover the world of treasure hunting, an alternate to alternative investing that is fun, interesting, and compelling. It also doubles as a unique way to display art on board yachts in your home or villa. Chilton Associates aids their clients in acquiring pieces of history which are meaningful and unique to each owner. These objects not only hold timeless secrets, they are also thought-provoking conversation pieces that appreciate and value over time, or they can appreciate and value over time. So we're going to be talking about everything having to do with that. He's got some great examples for us. I also wanted to say thank you to everyone who left us a review in the App Store last week. If you are liking what we're doing so far, please really leave us a review and comment what's been your favorite episode, just so it helps other people get involved, and it also shows the algorithms that we are worth listening to. So thank you very much for that in advance. If you guys didn't hear last week's episode, we were talking with Jack Wathan from Anchor Property just about everything having to do with investment properties. And next week, I'm talking with Southern Cross Wealth all about investing in stocks and bonds, the different kind of funds that are available out there, and offshore banking. So this week, I just want to say our disclosure again. We are not here to advise you what you should be doing with your money. If you need advice or you need help about what to do with your funds or your finances, you need to talk to a licensed professional. And we are not licensed professionals. This podcast is meant to be educational, fun, and insightful. So without any further ado, let's jump on in.
Really what we are treasure hunters. What we do is our clients tell us their areas of passion, and then we go out and scour history to find them one-of-a-kind items that they'd be proud to own and have in their homes. And so from anything from a JFK wedding invitation to Wayne Gretzky's original NHL contract to a Walt Disney signed sketch and a variety of other items, we help them find pieces of history that they can frame and beautifully display in their homes, offices, or maybe in the case for some of your listeners, and on their yachts. So it's really a substitute for art that allows them to own these one-of-a-kind pieces of history.
That's incredible. And how did you guys get started with doing this, with investing or with finding these kinds of things?
Yeah, so the name of our company is Chilton Associates, and so that is based off of our founder, David Chilton. And so in Canada, he might be a little bit more well-known than some of your audience in the States and other parts of the world, but he actually wrote a book called The Wealthy Barber, which was the best-selling book in Canada of all time and still is. And then he was a dragon on Dragon's Den, which is the Canadian alternative to Shark Tank. And so he was on PBS on a TV show in the 90s, and a volunteer who was working there on the phone bank also worked for a company in this collectibles industry. And so that's how Dave first sort of got interested in this space. And so she helped connect him to an auction where he bought his very first item, which was a Mark Twain letter. And then over the years, he bought a couple of other pieces, one of them being an Einstein etching. And what he found was that he had them beautifully framed in his home, and he really liked having them there, and he liked them way more than art. But even more so, he found when friends came over for dinner parties, his friends also preferred them to art. So they would go up to the walls and they would always ask questions, oh, what are these? And when he'd explain it to them what they were, they'd always be shocked that, oh, are they real? Where did you even get them from? And people were fascinated by these pieces of history. And he really saw an opportunity there that he thought that they could connect these sort of collectibles world and these one-of-a-kind pieces of history to buyers who aren't necessarily collectors, but would derive the same amount of passion and enjoyment from buying these items. But the thing is, a lot of them didn't know where to get started. A lot of them didn't know what the appropriate pricing would be. So he thought that we should start a company to sort of help these buyers with all that process and just make it easier for them to get these items.
You guys kind of go out, you learn about everything about your client, what they like, and then you just go out hunting. Where do you look for that
exactly.
kind of stuff?
So we start with sort of a meeting with the client, and just like you said, we learn all about their areas of interest and passion. So whether they have a favorite band, favorite TV show, some nostalgic memories from their childhood, everything about them and their passions. And then from there, we go and we hunt for the items. So on auction sites and auction houses, with private dealers and a variety of other sources, we search for these items and send them sort of updates as we find them with these items that are available. So what our team does is we send them a picture of the item, a description, and then also an estimate of how much it's going to cost. Because if this thing is at auction, it's actually not necessarily, you can buy it right now for this amount. So it might be an estimate. And the way we actually get that estimate is through our proprietary database. So we've built a database that has all the past auction prices. And so we're in a unique position to be able to advise people on what they should be spending so they know they're not getting ripped off. The last thing we want is for someone to buy something that should be $1,000 and they pay $10,000. We want to make sure people are paying the appropriate value. And so that's a lot of the value we bring to our clients by recommending that with our database. And so once a customer decides that they are interested in bidding on an item, we take care of everything from there on. So we actually do the bidding, which can be a timely process. Some of these auctions, they have rules called overtime bidding where things can go all the way into the night. So members of our team have been up past midnight sort of bidding on these items. And then from there, we take care of the shipping and everything to make sure that it's as seamless as possible for our clients, that if they want the item, they just let us know and how much they're willing to pay for it. And then we just have it arrive at their door.
That's amazing. So you guys handle the framing and all that kind of stuff for them. If they're like, just have it delivered, here's the space. This is
Exactly.
Where I
Yeah, we're sort of a concierge service within this space. And if they want it framed, we can do that. And so we don't take any markup on the framing costs. We just charge them for how much additional framing. But if they want to frame it on their own, we can just ship it to them regularly as well.
I'm really curious, what are some of the most unique pieces that you guys have found? Like you mentioned Wayne Gretzky's jersey. I love him. Obviously, being Canadian, I love hockey. But what are some of the most craziest things that you guys have
Yeah, and that's the thing about this space is everyone has different passions. And so the best things for people are all going to be unique depending on their interests. So for me, I love basketball. Basketball is my favorite sport, and one of the coolest items I've seen has been the original James Naismith handwritten rules to basketball. So when he was inventing the sport of basketball, he wrote out these rules, and I think it was typed, but then he had his handwritten annotations and little edits on them, and that actually recently went up for auction. So that's an incredible piece where it's the very first sort of catalyst to this sport that's now captivated the world, and it was really that being invented. So I thought that was incredible. Another piece too, I grew up reading Harry Potter, so Harry Potter is really nostalgic for me. And J.K. Rowling, the author, her chair that she wrote the first 2 books also went out for auction. So she had hand painted it saying like, I wrote Harry Potter in this chair, and it was the chair from her sort of study or office where she wrote those first 2 books. So those 2 items were the most interesting for me. But again, there's so many other items. And so because I knew this was a yachting podcast, I looked up some sort of more nautical themed items. And one of the more interesting ones were items from the Titanic. One was a deck chair. And so a deck chair from the Titanic, because it was wood, it floated and someone grabbed it. And then eventually it's made its way onto the private market. So that was auction. And then the very last meal before the ship tragically sank, that menu was recovered and ended up again in the private market. So both of those things sold, which is really interesting. So those are some of the cool items. Another one that we purchased recently, which was JFK Bouvier wedding invitation. And so we have that in our sort of inventory right now. So if anyone wants to buy that one, we can sell it. But it's really cool to hold and see in your hand and just get a glimpse into a little piece of history and see what people would have received when they got invited to that wedding.
If people are thinking, well, I can just go out and look for that myself, like search eBay or something, what do you think is the biggest challenges that they would face with doing that on their own, like as compared to what you guys can do to help?
For sure. Well, going into this space alone can be very intimidating. Like I mentioned before, a lot of people don't know how much things are worth and how much they should be paying. So markets like eBay, they're really at the risk of overpaying and getting ripped off. And then as well, they don't know if things are authentic. There's lots of fraud in this industry, and you can get ripped off easily if you don't have the proper authentication and provenance. And so our team is working in this space full time. And so we have the sort of expertise and knowledge to know which auction houses are reputable, what sort of authentication is legitimate, and to make sure that the items you're getting are actual items of history. And then as well, the time commitment can be overwhelming. We have a full-time staff that searches through thousands of items up for auction each week. And we really curate a list for each individual client that saves them a tremendous amount of time. It'd really be unrealistic for someone to do this on their own time on the side, to go through all the different auctions to find the items. And then lastly, like I mentioned, we have that database. So we are able to provide value by recommending how much they should be paying within a range based on this expertise. And then we're also using that to develop some trends so that when people want to maybe get ahead of a market or see if things are appreciating, then we can use that database to help them find those areas.
Wow, that's really clever. So at least people can kind of know that this is going to grow because there's a trend there. It's kind of also like in property where you're looking, okay, well, this area is already kind of maxed out, so you want to look somewhere else where you're actually going to see that your stuff grow. That's
Exactly.
amazing. I would be heartbroken if I got something and, figured out later that it was fraudulent because there's nothing really you can do with that. You're just like, great, now it's
For sure.
paperweight.
No, that's the worst, and we never want to have that happen for a client. So that's why we take sort of all necessary precautions to make sure the item is authentic and has the proper provenance and authenticity associated with it.
Right. Now, no doubt your founder, he's seen incredible growth for the things that he, first sourced like a long time ago. But what are some of the examples or appreciation growth for your clients?
Yeah. So like you mentioned, Dave has had some items appreciate really well in value. And the most promising returns come from whether through luck or skill, you do happen to catch the early end of that trend. So Dave bought that Einstein etching that I mentioned, and it was right before Einstein was named the man of the century. And since then, Einstein memorabilia has blown up in pricing. That particular piece is worth sort of 10 times what he actually paid for it, just because of the timing. And in that case, it was luck. Dave just happened to like the item and purchased it right before that Man of the Century award. And so that's one way. And then another area that's sort of similar that has blown up recently is space. And so a decade ago, you could get items from the Apollo 11 missions and all the other space missions at a relatively cheap price, where now that has blown up and there's appreciated a crazy in value. And so in terms of the appreciation that people can expect, it all depends on whether they are sort of at the beginning of that trend. And so like I mentioned, with our database, we're attempting to be able to predict some of those trends. But at the same time, the entire market is growing over time as wealth increases and increases. And so people can expect their item to at very least hold value.
I went up to the Space Center here. It's close to Titusville in Florida. And I got to watch all of the, all the missions and the launches and everything about the Apollos. And you walk around this gigantic spiral down of and you see all the astronauts that were ever there. That is so cool that all those artifacts are starting to be trendy now.
And I mean, I think everyone sort of shares that same passion where they find space fascinating. And once they sort of see some of the items that are available, it drives their interest in getting them. Like one that we saw just a couple months ago at auction was during the Apollo 11 mission, so the one where they first landed on the moon, they actually took up a piece of the Wright brothers plane that was the very first manned flight. And so there's actually pieces of material that were on the very first manned airplane flight, and then also on the very first man on the moon space mission. So sort of one of those pieces was up for auction and someone could buy it. That it sort of had that dual aspect of history with flight and sort of being in space on the moon. So really cool items available in the space area.
So talking about this alternative, it's treasure hunting, it's getting pieces that you are really interested in, but then also from an investment point of view, why do you feel people should look at this rather than other things like funds or maybe cryptocurrency or something else like that as an alternative investment?
For sure. Well, I mean, the main reason, sort of like you said, is that this space is fun. Our clients get way more joy and pride from owning these items and having them displayed on their wall where they can show them to their friends and colleagues than they do with shares in a mutual fund. By no means are we saying that clients should take all their money out of the stock market and put it into this space. That wouldn't be a very prudent move. But by putting some money into it, it's a small bit of diversification, since this is, like you mentioned, an alternative investment that isn't necessarily linked to the economy and the stock market. We like to think of it actually as an alternative investment because you get so much pride and joy from it. A lot of the value of this item is just being able to own it and show it off, and then at the same time appreciating in the background while you have it. And then really this is also a substitute for art. It's not just an investment. It's also something that they're going to have displayed on their walls. Everyone has walls to fill, whether it's at their home, office, cottage, yacht. And we find that most people prefer these types of items to art because there's a much more emotional connection to the history behind the item. It's a really conversational piece. When people see them, they ask, what is that? Where did you get that? And it starts conversations. And so we think other than just the investment aspects of it, all the other things that come with it and the joy that our clients derive is why they should be looking to diversify and put a little bit of money into this space.
Right. And not just things for the walls. Do you guys sometimes find like larger pieces, like sculptures or things that can be like objects to art type of thing that could just sit down on a flat surface?
Yep, lots of things that are sort of actual items and objects that can be displayed, whether it's in sort of an acrylic or glass box or just on a desk. So one of the items that I was looking up for sort of this podcast was some nautical telescopes. So from the 1800s, these old explorers who would use these telescopes to look and search on shore to see where they are. So some of those items have come up for auction before, and something like that would be really unique to hold and have on a yacht.
So I want to ask how much you charge for your services, and then also, do you have like a minimum investment amount that you'll work with someone?
So for our services, we don't charge anything upfront. So in order to be a client, there's no cost. And so what that means is that clients will have that first meeting where they share with us their passions, and then we go out and search items for them and then send them those items to let them know if they want to buy them. And so for that, there's no cost. We only charge when we actually add value when that customer buys an item. And so we charge a commission based on the price of the item, and it's on a case-by-case basis. So obviously, if someone is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, we're going to have a very low commission on those items, where if someone is just playing with a couple $1,000s, our commission will be higher. So it is a case-by-case basis, but there's absolutely no upfront cost. And we find that clients really love our pricing model because they think that we're adding so much value. They don't have the time to be searching through all these auction houses, and we're curators by sending them these individual items that really match their passions and interests, and they're so thankful for the amount of time we save them and the fact that we do everything for them, the bidding, the shipping, and everything in between.
You guys ship worldwide, like anywhere?
Yeah, we'll ship anywhere worldwide. And also to answer your question about the minimum investment, we don't have any minimum investment. It's just within this space, the sort of lower end of items that you'd be able to buy will be starting at around $1,000 US. But we don't have any minimum. That's just sort of the bottom end of the market.
Now, I know I didn't prep you for this question, but what's the most expensive thing you've seen on auction?
The most expensive thing I've seen on auction, off the top of my mind, I'm pretty sure it is Marilyn Monroe's dress that she wore for the Happy Birthday, Mr. President. And so that exact dress sold at auction. I think it was $6 million. Let me just
Oh my goodness.
find exactly how much that went for. It's crazy how small the sort of collector's market is. We've ended up getting connected to so many different people within this space. And so not directly, but we know someone who knows the person who actually bought this item, and they're a huge Marilyn Monroe fan. And so they bought this iconic dress for 6 million. I'm just trying to look it up.
No worries. That's amazing.
Yes. 4.8 is what it was. 4.8 is the most expensive item that I can see in memory. But there's also even those, the basketball rules that I was talking about earlier, they also sold for 4.3 million. So there is some expensive items on the very, very high end, but there's also more affordable items. So that JFK invitation that I mentioned earlier, we purchased for about $1,000 US. So you can get these unique, one-of-a-kind pieces of history at a range of different prices.
Right. That's amazing. And what are some of the things you'd be looking at, like if people are looking to invest maybe like $1,000 to $5,000? I guess it depends on what they like.
That's the thing. This space is huge. There's over thousands of different items that are available for auction each week. And so it's almost difficult to answer what type of items, but it would be less one-of-a-kind items where there's only one of them in the world. But for example, that invitation, there was 800 sent out. So who knows how many more of them are available. But most likely a lot of people didn't keep items from back then. So there's only a couple probably on the market, and maybe even less on the private market. And then as well, it really depends. The pricing is based a lot on the person who it's related to, the uniqueness of the item, and whether it's signed or not. So if that JFK invitation was signed by John F. Kennedy, then it would have gone for much more than $1,000. But since it was just the invitation to their wedding, it went for less. And so our team is sort of experts at figuring out how much things are going to go for based on all the different elements. And then we recommend to our clients what we think the piece will go for.
Could you tell me a little bit more about how you guys determine provenance?
Yeah, so we have direct relationships with lots of the auction houses who then in turn have relationships with the consigners who are giving them the items. And so we just deal directly with the auction houses to make sure that they've done their due diligence and homework. And if they haven't, we sort of do that. So we get in contact with the consignor and try and make sure that, okay, how did you actually get this item? So a lot of times things come directly from the estate of a family, where other times it is an assistant or a limo driver for that person. And if they have the proper backstory, plus it's been authenticated, then these things are almost always authentic and real.
That makes a lot of sense. And now if someone is looking to maybe go and turn it around and sell this in 5-10 years, would you guys also be able to give them an updated value on what it cost when they go around to sell it?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd absolutely be able to let them know how much it would be roughly valued at, and also advise them on the best avenues to sell it. Sometimes it is through auction, other times it's through a private dealer, and so we can help people when they're looking to realize value on their items. We can help with all that process too.
So now if anyone listening wants to get in touch with you or they're interested in just learning more and asking some questions, how can they do that?
So first they can check out our website. So it's www.chiltonassociates.com. I'll probably have you put that in the show notes or something so I don't have to spell it out. Or they can get in touch with me directly. So my email is aidan@chiltonassociates.com. And then again, I'll have you put that in the show notes too. But either of those avenues, reach out through our contact form, check out our website, or get in touch with me. And we're happy to explain a little bit more about the space and answer any questions they have.
All right, guys, so if you have any other questions for Aidan, you can go ahead and check out the show notes to get a hold of him. And that is the second to last podcast of 2018. I thought it'd be a great way to go out of 2018 thinking about the goals and plans that we have for 2019. So, I'd be interested to hear what your goals are and what your plans are. Hit me up on Instagram if this has been insightful for you or you want to share your feedback with me. You can get a hold of me at Nautic Nomad on Instagram. And yeah, thank you so much for stopping by, guys. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you'll hear next week. You'll be the first one to hear when our offshore banking and investments podcast goes live with Southern Cross Wealth. You can also check them out on Instagram if you have some questions right now and you don't want to wait the whole week. They are ready and willing, standing by to help any yacht crew who have questions about, setting up an offshore banking account. They work with Standard Bank, and then also how to beat inflation and what to do with investing your funds. So until next time, guys, wishing you a very safe and happy Christmas. We'll be launching the next podcast on December 21st, 2018. So we'll talk to you before Christmas. But as you're making plans for 2019 and everything that you have going on coming up in your life, just wanted to share all of this insight and knowledge that I'm learning with you all as we just discover, about what to do with our money that we make. Until next time, guys, safe sails and following seas.